Hare Śrīmad is divine grace. Sridandi Goswami Avai Chandravinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Shri Shri Panchatattva Bhagavan ki ISKCON Amsterdam ki Shri Sad Goswami Prabhu ki Grantraj Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki Gaur Premanandi Hari Hari Bo. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Glories to Srila Prabhupada. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Śrīmati Bhaktivedanta Swami Nami Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vacharani Nirvishesha Shunyāvari Paśyācchade Satarane. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. 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 We are reading from the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, 2nd canto, 1st chapter, the first step in God realization. Text number 22. Rajovacha Yata Sandharyate Brahman Dharanaya Prasamata Yadrishiva Haridashu Purushaya Manomalam Rajovacha Yata Sandharyate Brahman Dharanaya Prasamata Yadrishiva Haridashu Purushasya Manomalam Rajovacha Yata Sandharyate Brahman Dharanaya Prasamata Yadrishiva Haridashu Purushaya Manomalam
Rajovacha Yata Sandharyate Brahman Dharanaya Prasamata Yadrishiva Haridashu Purusasya Manomalam Rajovacha Sandharyate Brahman Dharanaya Prasamata Yadrishiva Haridashu Purushasya Manomalam Rajovacha
Sandharyate Brahman Dharanaya Prasamata Yadrishiva Haridashu Purushasya Manomalam
Raja Uvacha. The fortunate king said, Yata, as it is, Sundharyate, the conception is made. Brahman, O Brahmana, Dharana, conception. Yatra, where and how. Samata, in a summary. Yadrishi, the way by which. Va, or. Harit, extricated. Ashu, without delay. Purushasya, of a person. Manaha, of the mind. Malam, dirty things. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, Sesi Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The fortunate King Parikshit, inquiring further, said, O Brahmana, please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied, and how the conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed. Purport. The dirty things in the heart of a conditioned soul are the root cause of all troubles for him. A conditioned soul is surrounded by the manifold miseries of material existence, but on account of his gross ignorance, he is unable to remove the troubles due to dirty things in the heart, accumulated during the long prison life in the material world. he is actually meant to serve the will of the Supreme Lord. But on account of the dirty things in the heart, he likes to serve his concocted desires. These desires, instead of giving him any peace of mind, create new problems and thus bind him to the cycle of repeated birth and death. These dirty things of fruitive work and empiric philosophy can be removed only by association with the Supreme Lord. The Lord, being omnipotent, can offer his association by his inconceivable potencies. Thus persons who are unable to pin their faith on the personal feature of the Absolute are given a chance to associate with his Virat Rupa, or the cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord. Cosmic impersonal feature of the Lord is a feature of his unlimited potencies. Since the potent and potencies are identical, even the conception of his impersonal cosmic feature helps the conditioned soul to associate with the Lord indirectly and thus gradually rise to the state of personal contact. Maharaj Parikshit was already directly connected with the personal feature of the Lord Sri Krishna, and as such he had no need to inquire from Shukadeva Goswami about where and how to apply the mind in the impersonal Virat Rupa of the Lord. But he inquired after a detailed description of the matter for the benefit of others who are unable to conceive of the transcendental personal feature of the Lord as the form of eternity, knowledge, and bliss. The non-devotee class of men cannot think of the personal feature of the Lord. Because of their poor fund of knowledge, the personal form of the Lord, like Ram or Krishna, is completely revolting to them. They have a poor estimation of the potency of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita 9:11, it is explained by the Lord himself that people with a poor fund of knowledge deride the Supreme Personality of the Lord, taking him to be a common man. Such men are ignorant of the inconceivable potency of the Lord. By the inconceivable potency of the Lord, he can move in human society or any other society of living beings and yet remain the same omnipotent Lord without deviating in the slightest from his transcendental position. So, for the benefit of men who are unable to accept the Lord in his personal, eternal form, Maharaj Parikshit inquired from Shukadeva Goswami how to fix the mind on him in the beginning, and the Goswami replied in detail as follows. Rajuvacha yata sandharyate brahman dharana yatra samatha yadrishi va haredashu purushasya manomalam. The fortunate King Parikshit, inquiring further, said, O Brahmana, please describe in full detail how and where the mind has to be applied and how the conception can be fixed so that the dirty things in a person's mind can be removed. Mukam kroti vachalam mangamanai tegarim yad kripadam vande Shri Gurundev Taranam. This is the most intelligent question. Yadrishi means the way by which. Vaharet ashu. Without delay, they can be extricated. And what is that to be extricated or pulled out? Is purushasya mana malam. Within the person, the purusha, specifically mana, in his mind, there are malam, dirty things. So what is the quickest way to become purified of dirty things? Dirty things means asatsanga, bad association. This is, first of all, psychological. We talk of bad association. We say that men and women should not associate together loosely. We say that one should not go to places where the mode of ignorance predominates and associate with persons and things in that atmosphere. So this is the more outward manifestation of what begins in the mind. Actually, first of all, we associate with our mind. And if the mind is our enemy, then that already is asatsanga. Now how is it the mind is enemy? When the mind is uncontrolled. When we think that this material mind is our best friend, that is when he is our enemy. You see, when we think that we can trust this rascal mind, when we think that we can let the mind go wherever it wants, then the mind is our worst enemy. Because, as described here, malam, there are dirty things in the heart which mean that the mind has a very strong tendency to wrongly associate. Now, association, this is actually a psychological term. And this is just what I mean. The psychologists say, you probably heard the famous ink blot test. Has everyone heard about that? Also known as the Rorschach test. Yes. So they just take a piece of paper and put some drops of ink on it and then fold it. And then it makes a kind of, blot. And then they put this before you and they say, what do you see? So you see it's just a blot, just some amorphous shape. But if you look at it, then the mind, Prabhupada says very nicely, he's describing the whole thing, concocted desires. So the mind, by its desires, it concocts something out of this shape. So there's some, spilled piece of ink there, and the poor man is looking at it and saying, I see sex. That's usually what they say. I see sex, or something like that. I see woman. I see this or that. Or if they're obsessed by fears, anxieties, then they see death, danger, things like that. Whatever is on their mind then just becomes manifest that way. So that's the meaning of impure association. It's just a blot. That's all it really is. But because of the malam, the impurities in the mind, then one sees those impurities in the thing. And we're doing that always. We're doing that always. It's not just with ink blots, it's with everything we see. We project our malam, our impurities, upon this world. And thus we create a different world from the way Krishna intends this world to be. What does Krishna intend this world to be? I've been explaining over the past several classes here and in Radhadesh that this world is given as a means of sacrifice. Actually, the world was created out of sacrifice. This is the statement of the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam and of the Rig Veda, all the Vedic scriptures, that Brahma, Lord Brahma, he created this world by sacrifice. And the intention is for sacrifice. After creating all the living entities, he gave them Veda, knowledge, spiritual knowledge, knowledge also how to live one's life in this material world. And with that knowledge there is yajna, sacrifice. This is the method to satisfy all one's desires in a peaceful, sattvic way, and then attain liberation, develop pure devotion of the Lord, go back home, back to Godhead, all by yajna, by sacrifice. That is the real intention. So therefore, one whose mind is clear, he sees everything that way. He sees everything in relationship to the Lord. He's simply thinking, how can I engage everything in Krishna's service? That is the vision of the pure devotee. Just like my god brother, now he's taken sannyas since a few years, so he has a wonderful name, A.C. Bhakti Vaibhava Swami. The A.C. stands for Avinash Chandra, and that was his brahmachari name. So he was one of the early disciples of Srila Prabhupada in Germany, and he went to Berlin in the early days, because Germany is a very big country, and the movement started in Hamburg, so he's from there. And so the devotees from that city, they would just go out like an adventure on trains to other cities and do Sankirtan and try to meet people, try to create a little interest. And then in this way, hopefully a center would form in that city. So they were, of course, very inexperienced in those days. Anyway, he went to Berlin, and that was for him a big adventure. He was a boy from Hamburg, some suburb of Hamburg. He'd never been out of there. So going to Berlin. And so in excitement of preaching in Berlin, he got a postcard. He bought a postcard from one of those kiosks for the tourists. And it has this photograph on it of this church. There's a ruined church, which is a central monument in Berlin on the Kurfürstendamm. It's called the Gedächtnis Church. It's the church where they remember that Berlin was once a big piece of garbage in 1945. Occupied by Russian troops. And therefore the Germans should be good from now on, otherwise it may happen again. That's the idea of this church, remember. So anyway, but it's a ruin, but still a very imposing structure. It's very big. So there was a postcard with a photograph of this. And so in his innocence, he wrote a letter to Srila Prabhupada on the back of this postcard. Srila Prabhupada, I'm in Berlin. We were preaching, having some success. And then he sent this. And Prabhupada wrote back. His reply was, this building on the back of the postcard, may we get it for a temple. Try to get this building. And then being, you see, a very enthusiastic young brahmachari, he actually went to make inquiries from the city government. If there's a possibility that this building could be given over to the Hare Krishna movement, which no one had even heard of in those days. So my point is, that's a vision of the pure devotee. You send him a postcard with a picture of a church, and then he immediately starts to think. His mental imagery, or his mental process is, he, instead of seeing the thing in terms of sense gratification, attachment, or aversion, he sees it in terms of Krishna service. Oh, this would make a very nice temple. Try to get it. So the pure devotee sees the whole world in that way. Sees every person, everything. Just like one reporter asked Srila Prabhupada, I think it was in the airport, that what do you have to do with Buddhism? Meaning that there must be some connection between the Hare Krishna movement and some esoteric connection, because the devotees have shaved heads and wear robes, so there must be. So you ask, what do you have to do with Buddhism? And Prabhupada just looked at him and said, we have nothing to do with Buddhism, thisism, or thatism. And we are simply telling the truth. That's how Prabhupada replied. We are simply telling the truth. And you should, and he invited the reporter personally. He said, you should try to understand this truth that we are telling, because if you do, your life will become perfect. So then the reporter was quite astonished that Prabhupada spoke to him in that way. But this is Srila Prabhupada. If a reporter comes, he doesn't see this person as a reporter. He doesn't hear the question in terms of mental speculation. One might think that a good answer would be to start explaining, well, you see, Lord Buddha is an incarnation of Krishna, and his philosophy is a kind of Krishna consciousness, but not quite the same, and blah, blah, blah. The Buddhists also take sannyas, and like this, like that. Or there's Buddhism and Hinduism, and this, and we are sort of connected with Hinduism. But Prabhupada, no, he cut right through the mental platform to the platform of the soul, reminding this person that he was reminding him, you are a devotee of Krishna. That is the truth. That is the actual fact. And this is what we are preaching. That this life is meant for devotional service. So if you hear this from us, and you take it up, then your life will become perfect. This is the mission of the pure devotee. He has no other mission. He's not going to meet us, at the halfway house of mental speculation and dicker back and forth about, the fine details, splitting hairs, historical facts, theories, Indology, and blah, 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 on and on. Because this is just talking around the real issue. This is simply, as Prabhupada would say, licking the outside of a jar of honey that is sealed. There's no taste in this. One can talk for a while, and it is interesting, but it does nothing for this manomalam, these dirty things in the heart. They remain. And therefore we see in the Kali Yuga, these so-called intellectuals, they're among some of the most degraded persons in the world today. Just like there was, some years ago, there was a shock in a university town in America. The big professor, very well-respected professor who lived in a large house, a multi-storied house. So late at night, he was in great anxiety and distress. He was calling the police and asking them, please come, there's been a tragedy. Police came, and they found a woman in the garden below his bedroom window. And she was naked, and she had fallen somehow from the window. She was dead. And so they said, what happened? And then he was explaining that he was involved in some kind of very bizarre sexual act involving the window, and she slipped and fell into the garden and was killed. So, he's a big professor, very well respected, and then this whole scandal was revealed in the newspapers. So, this is, you see, intellectuals, they have big minds, many, many compartments, they're very imaginative, but because there is dirt in that mind, therefore, helplessly, they're drawn by all that intellectualism into all kinds of abominable, you see, and bizarre pursuits of sense gratification. And of course, then the karmic consequences for all of his good intelligence, his big intelligence, the karmic consequences of the mind being engaged in those ways is very inauspicious. Better than one should just be a simple fool, you see, and just drag on in life doing the basic things than having a big brain which is always hatching all kinds of insane ways, animalistic ways, to enjoy the senses. But anyway, everybody's under this unfortunate influence nowadays. We may be simple, but our leaders, they have big brains, and they're using these brains in so many ways to create a hell on earth that we all have to live in. They're the leaders, and they're passing the laws, and they're doing the science, and they're teaching in the schools, and they're making the philosophy. And we all have to swallow it. And these people are madmen, literally. They're mad, they're diseased. Sometimes it is shown, these books are published, looks into the private lives of great people, what they said in their private moments, how they acted. And you can see they're mad. They're mad. Just like I was, one of my godbrothers who has studied psychology very much. So he was telling me about Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is of course, a big name, even today, in psychiatry. And psychoanalysis is supposed to be the means of curing us of our mental problems. But he said when you study Sigmund Freud's personal life, you find he was the sickest person you could imagine. He was so full of anxieties and obsessions, and he had his students. You see, he started this psychoanalysis at the beginning of the century, and he had many big students, all the famous names, this Adler, of course Jung, C.G. Jung, and Brill, and a bunch of other, I forget their names, and who cares anyway. But there they were all around him, his disciples, sitting at the feet of the master, and he was pontificating all this. It was all invented. Psychology, the psychoanalysis is all his invention, just his own invented ideas about how the mind works. And but because it's all in the mental plane, So naturally, the mind speculates. So his disciples were also speculating, and then they began to think of their own interpretations of what Freud was saying. He was encouraging it by his philosophy. So then they started to speculate, and then they started to form different ideas. And then Freud went into such anxiety and depression when Jung left him, when they had their final argument. Jung was telling him, I can't agree with your obsession about sex. You say everything comes down to sex. Actually, Prabhupada said he was right. Freud is right. Jung couldn't accept that. Jung was more of an idealist. So anyway, he was disagreeing, and they had their final break in, I think, 1911. And this Freud, he was crying, he was fainting. All these things are described because he was completely beside himself because his disciple left. So, yes, this is the material life in the material world. And these big leaders, big philosophers whom we follow, they're mad, they're crazy. Yeah? Because their senses and minds are uncontrolled. So we're all under this influence, deranged influence, insane influence. Prabhupada told a story of a murder case in India. So it was such a horrible case that a psychologist or psychiatrist was brought to testify about the sanity of this man. Such a brutal crime. So the defense was arguing, for someone to do this, he must have been mad. And you cannot punish a mad person. So the psychiatrist was brought to testify. And so they asked, do you think this person is mad? His reply was, yes, I have analyzed his behavior. I would come to the conclusion that he is not sane. But I must also add one thing. As far as I have seen in this world, there are no sane people at all. Everybody is crazy. And that is a fact, because the society, the principles behind society, the ideals of society, ideology, is crazy. So therefore this question is very, very intelligent. How to quickly overcome this manomalam, the impurities of our mind which are causing so much disturbance. And the implication here is that this mystic yoga process, which is being described in this chapter, it may do it, but not ashu, not very quickly. It's very long process, very arduous. I explained all this yesterday. You have to withdraw yourself, perform severe austerities, fix the mind through breath control and so on, and very few people are going to do this. So how can it be done by the mass of people? Quickly. And Srila Prabhupada in the purport speaks of the universal form. So for those who have strong tendencies to impersonalism, they can begin to control the mind through the universal form. This is seeing everything in connection with the impersonal God. The description is here of how the trees are the hairs on his body, the rivers are the veins, the ocean is his belly, the moon is his mind, and so on and so forth. So if one learns from the Vedic scriptures to see the world in that way, then he has a kind of, you could say, a metaphor, an analogy of this world being the energy of God. And in that way, wherever he looks, he can remember that this is God, God's energy. But it is not personal. Therefore, there is a distinct danger that he'll not take it seriously after some time. You see, it all depends on his imagination, actually. This is still an imaginative process. So he can choose to see the world in that way, or he can choose not to. He can choose to see the world in terms of sense gratification. And because of this malam, these dirty things in the heart, that will happen. And the modes are always in competition. So we may try to, or by by force of our willpower, by some mental exercise, some form of meditation, we may try to stay in the mode of goodness, but actually these impurities are more powerful than that, more powerful than our will. So then what is the easy and quick way for everyone? So elsewhere Srila Prabhupada explains that this universal form conception, which the impersonalists try to assemble in their mind, is actually the same, for the same purpose, the Lord appears in the deity form. The Archa, Murti, is said in the Chaitanya Charitamrita to be the manifestation of the universal form, but in a size, in an aspect that we can serve. Srila Prabhupada said in a lecture, imagine if you had to worship the universal form. Imagine that was our deity in ISKCON. We had no Sri Sri Radha Gopinath, we had no Gaur Nitai, but we had the Vishvarup. Then how would you make an offering for the Vishvarup? See, how would you bathe and dress the Vishvarup in the morning? Prabhupada said, all the cloth of all the mills of the world would not be enough to dress the Vishvarup Murti. So this is why that process it's impersonal. You cannot engage your senses in practical service. And therefore the senses in this mystic yoga process, they have to just be suppressed. They have to just be held in abeyance while one tries to imagine the form of the Lord out of the universe. So we do not follow this process. Rather, Krishna himself appears in a form of material elements. That's why it is compared to the universal form. Just as the universal form is the total body of Vishnu. This is why it is also Murti. The only one in this universe who worships that Murti is Lord Brahma. He is worshipping the Mahapurush in Brahmaloka. That's his Murti. This is told by Sri Sanatana Goswami in this Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. He's worshipping the Mahapurush as his deity. But we cannot do that. But we can worship the Archamurti form, which appears as visible material elements and in a size that we can see and serve. And in this way, by regular service to the deity, the impression of the personal form of the Lord becomes emblazoned in the mind. When one is initiated into devotional service, when one has spiritual master to direct him in service to the deity, when one regularly renders devotional service every day, chanting before the deity and rendering also the puja, details of puja, then the form of the deity becomes permanently emblazoned in the mind. And this is not actually the thing we have to understand, this is not just a psychological process. This is not just seeing something over and over again and then the mind absorbs it. But actually the deity manifests in the mind by the grace of the Lord in the heart if we render devotional service regularly to him. And when the deity manifests in the mind, then one is always in the temple. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has written a very beautiful song. This Mama Mana Mandire, probably heard it, sung to a very beautiful melody. So he's speaking of his constant memory of the Supreme Lord. Mama Mana Mandir means the temple of my mind. So in the temple of my mind, I'm always remembering Krishna. And I'm always offering him arati with the lamplight of my love, my prema bhakti. So this is the stage we should all aspire to attain. But as I was saying yesterday, it's not to be attained by some other kind of imaginative process, which unfortunately is there. In places like Radhakund, there are Babajis. They will give you another kind of imaginative process that also won't work. So the process Srila Prabhupada has given us, coming in the bona fide disciplic succession, Bhagavata Dharma it is called. Bhagavata Dharma. So this is the process by which the Supreme Personality of Godhead will actually manifest within the mind of the devotee very quickly, in due course of time, in due course of our service. He very quickly manifests within the mind of the sincere devotee. And when Lord Krishna appears within the mind, appears within the heart, then no malam, no impure things can remain. That's why there's one example given comparing the body to a fortress under attack. You see, the body is a fortress, but the enemy army is at the gates. They're threatening to, those, you've probably all seen those old films, and the middle-aged fortress, and the big army is around, and they have the battering ram banging on the door, and from the ramparts they're pouring boiling oil and firing arrows down, and everyone has seen these kind of films. So this is our situation. The fortress is the body, and there is a throne. The throne, which is the heart. And the heart means the seat of the mind. A throne within. And so the enemy wants to capture. The enemy is trying to invade, to capture this throne. The enemy means, of course, Maya, the sense objects. We're perceiving these sense objects lusty, materialistic way, and therefore lust is invading our fortress of the body through all the senses, and their purpose is to penetrate the heart and completely pollute us, thinking, feeling, willing, so that we will engage in further sinful activities and become more and more entangled in material existence. So, what to do in such a case? The enemy is at the gates. So the Bhagavata answer is that you install Lord Krishna upon that throne. And then no enemy can invade. This simple process. So actually this is now, we're coming to the moment of this initiation, and that's exactly what initiation means. To install Lord Krishna into the heart. So without further ado, this is what we are going to do. Yes, exactly.